Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com.
The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is our topic discussion for this evening. We have lots of fabulous technical segments planned, some from myself and company here at Security Weekly, many from BHIS that we were talking about earlier with Jason from Black Hills. So it's going to, and other technical segments too. I think a lot of them are going to come from Security Weekly and BHIS. We've been partners and friends with BHIS for a really long time. So I think the story goes that John was going to, way back in the day, 2007, John and I were talking on the phone, and he's like, I was thinking about going on like some other podcasts and stuff. I'm like, no, you're going to come on our podcast. And he was like, yeah, okay. And we've basically been friends and business partners ever since. So yeah, it's been a long-standing relationship, which is good. And I wanted to also mention our sponsor, Recorded Future. You can go to recordedfuture.com/security weekly. You can get trending threat insights delivered to your inbox every day from the fine folks at Recorded Future. Their research team is outstanding. They have a free Cyber Daily email. Over 35,000 others have joined this daily email that they get, which I can see. If you're in security, your job is threat intelligence, incident response, monitoring an enterprise network, why wouldn't you have this additional resource come into your inbox every day to tell you what to look for? So, and it's completely free. Again, recordedfuture.com/security weekly. So we're going to, wow, everyone is here to talk about the future of security. Now, some of you may have seen some short videos that we've done in the past where we've asked others about the future of security. Now we're going to talk about it right here on the show tonight. So the first question is, what are some of the major changes you hope to see in security over the next 5 years? So we get our magic 8 ball, our crystal ball, what
20-sided die.
20-sided die.
20-sided die. Is that?
I've been
like a thing?
reading a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
They have the 20-sided die.
Oh yeah, that's right. They do.
Cubicles and compromises coming from Black Hills.
Is that in the future? So that, I mean, that really is the future of security that you're talking about, Jason.
Yeah, just role playing, incident response.
That is a completely different connotation in my head, Jason.
The 8 ball only has how many choices?
I don't remember. There's 20. The 8 ball is definitely not 20.
Yeah.
Is it more?
I don't know. I think it's less.
I think it's less.
I think it's less.
So we're going to answer your question about the...
What are some
years?
of the major changes you hope to see in security over the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, from what I'm seeing right now, just being in marketing, being a part of the community, being...
You're Jason Blanchard from marketing.
I am. I'm from marketing.
Marketing.
I'm seeing a massive influx of college students in cyber clubs and things like that. So what I'm seeing is a lot of junior entry people that need to be onboarded, need to be trained, and need to be brought up to what the people who are on this show are used to doing and used to seeing. I don't know if they're ready for that huge influx of new employees.
We need them, though, so it's not a bad idea.
Right.
My son's in the Cyber Patriot program, part of the Air Force Junior ROTC program out of the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. I think it's great, right? Teaching these kids some of those problems.
And the Air Force students do really well in Cyber Patriot.
They do.
Yeah,
I was involved in an event where the Air Force was they do really well.
Yeah, so the Air Force actually has a cybersecurity practice as part of one of their components in their engineering programs.
Yeah.
And what they do is with the Air Force Junior ROTC program, they bring these kids into the Cyber Patriot program to teach them about some of these issues. They do little competitions. I think it's great because we need the skill set. So the earlier we can get kids involved, understanding some of the cybersecurity issues, really start to focus on solutions to those. These are kids that eventually can come up and fill some of that shortage we have in the cybersecurity space. So I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more universities providing curriculum. And we've seen that over the years. University of Colorado Springs has a cybersecurity dedicated curriculum, which, when I was going through school, that stuff didn't exist. So, I mean, that's all great.
Yeah.
What I would like to see in the next 5 years on this topic of getting more talent into the cybersecurity field is allowing students to not just learn security stuff, right? But learn those fundamentals that are so important to learn: networking, systems administration, programming, communication skills, all those things you need, I think, to be a really good cybersecurity professional is not just knowing about vulnerabilities and exploits and how the tools work and all that stuff, which is largely what the curriculums are based on, but understand how to work as a team, how to communicate, understanding how things work, like how is a Windows domain put together, how are things connected. Going back to our story today, I want to put a firewall in place, right? And that's just one part of it. However, underneath that, there's cabling, networking, switching. If you don't understand those fundamentals and building blocks in the foundation, it's super hard to go in and say, well, I'm going to go into this network and install a firewall. Well, guess what? Your roadblock might be some kind of network problem. And guess what? Your network problem may come down to a cable. So if you don't understand the difference between Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6,
layer 2,
distance,
layer 3,
layer 2,
which I don't.
duplex negotiation, all of that stuff, you can't even start with the security aspect of it. Like, you got to do basic connectivity. That's important.
True, but part of it is by the time kids get there, I'm not sure we're doing much of that cabling anymore in some respects.
I disagree. I think that's going to be a part of it for a long time.
Well, my question to you, Paul, was going to be sort of, I think it's similar to what Matt's thinking is, the way technology is going, the way so much is happening sort of, in the cloud, in containers, new technologies, but technologies that are, let me put it this way. My question to you is, it's a nice idea, it's a nice goal. How do you see us getting there? Because I don't see our industry moving in that direction, because people are having a hard enough time just keeping up with the technology and just making things work.
We are abstracting a lot of the layers away with some of this new technology. Now, when I was in graduate school, I built an assembler. That's what you did.
Yeah. How
many people have to build an assembler today? They don't, right? Because we've made programming languages easier. We don't have to build an assembler anymore.
No.
The technologies have transitioned. I don't use that skill set anymore. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that with the way technology is moving, certain layers are being abstracted away from us that we may not have to worry about in the future. Software-defined networking, cloud, containers, all these other things may not require us to have some of that base understanding anymore.
It still hits a cable and an operating system at the end of the day.
Right now, Paul, I've been working. I'm the president of vice president, of SteamForge. It's a non-for-profit, and we work here in the island with several colleges. And I've been able to present at other colleges outside of the island. One of the things that I'm seeing is that in terms of technology, colleges are getting it right. Now, they're teaching networking right now. Many are working with Cisco, with Juniper. They're getting all of this gear. In fact, I went to a college in South Dakota that they actually had all of the latest Palo Alto gear there, and they also had different EDR products that they were working on as part of their cyber program and everything. So in terms of technology, they had it very well. When I started talking with them about the strategic side, because right now we're talking here, technical is tactic. That's the way I see it. It's the tactical side of everything. And when I was asking them, do you guys understand business? Do you guys understand how many of these organizations are actually structured, how they work? How would you integrate security as part of a business process where you don't hinder that business process? Is that something that is getting covered for you guys? And that's where they go like, no. And I think we focused so much on the tactical, we forgot the strategic. And now colleges have finally are catching up to the technical side, and they're right there in the tactical side doing very well. But on the strategic side, they keep forgetting that all of this security stuff is actually part of a business process, and it's part of organizations that still have a mission, either to generate money or to provide a service to the public, or simply achieve something outside of just being techie and keeping stuff ultra secure.
Carlos, I agree with you 100% here. In that, I think what I'd love to see is the integration of security into the business. The working with the business hand in hand, not only to drive the outcome of the business, but also secure it and reduce risk at the same time. And I think that's one of the things that is transforming in some places, but not everywhere, where security is still this kind of separate unit. It's this outside entity. It's always after the fact. I'd love to see security fully integrated into the business, understanding what are the goals and objectives of the business? Why are they doing these new applications, deploying this new technology, moving to cloud, so that they understand it from a business perspective, and then be able to relate some of the concerns and risks, and how do we protect that as we move forward? That integration to me is what I'd love to see in the next 5 years, because I think that's the big thing that's missing, and we're not aligned on business objectives and goals to what security ultimately is trying to protect.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was talking with several of the colleges was they were asking where should we start? I told them, well, you already have business classes, but one of the areas that I still see very lacking, and that is kind of like that glue between the both layers, is actually those soft skills. How do you prep a report? How do you craft that report so you don't lose them with all of the technical jargon? How do you talk with people? How do you organize and work together in teams? I was still talking with many of these colleges, and all of the challenges were individual. And we're like, why don't you make them work as teams? Why don't you force them? Like, you have to choose a team leader. You have to have a project. Somebody has to take the role of project manager, and then you switch them up for the next side. I'm telling you, you have to work on those soft skills, because if not, they're going to gain all of this technical skill right now in the evolution level that we currently are in the industry. And they have all this technical skill, but they still don't know how to even talk with other people and how to transmit all of this stuff. They need to learn that. And then you bring them over to the business side, because now they have that solid foundation of technical skills, soft skills, where they can then bring over the business logic and also how stuff operates to be able to kind of glue everything in a cohesive manner. And that was one of the things I was actually talking with one of the local deans here in the island.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge for our generation coming up as younger kids. The soft skills, the communication skills, the ability to communicate with humans.
Yes.
Because we are these kids are, look, my kids are the same way. They're tied to those phones. They're playing on the phones. They're texting, but they don't know how to actually have a conversation. They don't know how to be able to succinctly provide a summary of any information. That communication soft skill is a challenge for that next generation coming up, because technology's allowed them not to have to talk to people. And I think that's a really tough struggle.
I think that's why sports and arts and being involved with activities when you're in school, elementary through high school, is so important.
Yeah,
because it teaches them that team
skill,
dynamic, that skill of communication.
Yes, exactly.
So,
and I think that's tough.
I have a couple thoughts. Well, an immediate response to what you just said, sports and the arts in school are very often the first programs that are cut when there's funding issues, but that's a whole nother topic. A thought that I've had for a while now, and it sort of speaks to what Carlos was saying, and is sort of an answer to the original question, which I have a more complete answer, but you know, we all are good friends with a lot of people, SANS instructors, and SANS courses are everywhere, and everybody's loves to go take the SANS courses. And whenever I happen to talk to somebody that I know that's a SANS instructor, or if there's one in town and I get to go visit them, I'm impressed at how many people are there that are eager to learn. But I've been asking myself this question on the inside, and I'll put it out publicly. Part of my vision for the future would be I'd like to see as many SANS types courses, SANS types institutions that are teaching something like secure coding, or all the things that we've been talking about that are needed, we think, to move security forward. Be as prevalent, be out there. And my question is simply, why aren't they? Why aren't there more? And maybe they are, and we just don't see them. But are there as many people eagerly wanting to become developers, network people that do all the stuff that's happening in the cloud with containers and Docker and all that kind of stuff, and all the other buzzwords? Why isn't there such enthusiasm for that? But I don't see it, but there continues to be this enthusiasm for getting into the security field, and most people I talk to, because I'm sort of a quasi public figure, and I get approached a lot by people that want to get into the business, and they usually want to be pen testers, and I'm like, God, part of me is like, we don't need more pen testers, we need more people that know how to make things that are secure in the first place. So that brings me to my vision. Let me finish, answer the question, and then y'all can push back and comment. What I'd like to see 5 years from now, what I think is going to happen to security for it to advance, is it needs to become more ubiquitous, and it needs to become more transparent, which means necessarily that things need to be built more securely in the first place for it to work. Then what is this thing that we call security becomes much more of a defensive function, which security, I would argue, by its very nature, is a defensive, reactive type of activity. But we don't talk about that enough because we're still chasing down vulnerabilities, which I would argue is necessary, but isn't in the essence of the definition what security is all about.
I think moving forward, Jeff, I think security will be more top of mind. My concern is that what we need to tackle in terms of changes in the next 5 years is making sure that people have those other skills that are required to be able to accomplish security. And what I'm hearing from everyone tonight is that one of those important skills is communication skills, being able to talk to people. One of those skills is understanding how stuff works at a foundational level. And if you have those two things, I think you're in a much better position to implement security. And what I hear Jeff saying too is, why aren't things designed with security in mind to ease some of that burden 5 years down the road when people are getting into the workforce trying to secure things? And people are building things more with security in mind. Jeff, optimistically, I like to think that 5 years from now, when we build stuff, networks, systems, software, that they're built with security in mind, easing our job. However, to secure those, you still need to have those communication skills. You still need to have that foundational
and you need
knowledge.
That integration. See, that's the thing that I think is missing, is we still look at security as a separate thing. It's by itself.
I agree, Matt. And fundamentally, what's missing in the world in general is a reason to do security.
Yeah, because we think of it as a cost center, not as a...
one of the discussions I was having with the dean that I mentioned from the University of Puerto Rico over here. I was talking with him, and as I was explaining all of this stuff, he came out with this line. So he told me, so what you're saying is that security it's not security itself, that it is just best practices. That once we integrate all of these best practices in our coding program, that we should validate inputs, that we should log information, we should log it this way, then we can actually move that bar of what is actually security higher up, and all of this basic stuff simply becomes just part of the best practices of the stuff that we should be teaching. And I actually told him, ding, 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 you got it.
Yeah. Which means integrating security into the processes, into the business from day one, not looking at security as a separate add-on after the fact kind of structure. And I think, to me, that's nirvana over the next number of years. When I wrote the strategy document, Jeff will remember this, you will remember aspects of this. 2015, I wrote this strategy thesis. I said, look, when we get to 2020 and we start moving things to the cloud and we start abstracting all these layers away, what's the role of the CISO? What's the role of the CIO at the end of the day? And I always felt that the CISO's role would become integrated into the business, and that it would be an enabler for the business. Because as we continue to adopt these technologies, the role of the CIO really transforms into a role of a CTO. Right? What's the right technology architecture, not necessarily the day-to-day operations, because a lot of that would be managed outside. But security would have to integrate itself somehow into the business to be much more aligned with the business to drive those goals forward. I think we're heading there, but I really want to see more of that integration as we go, because to your point, Carlos, we do that, then security best practices are embedded into the core foundations of building code, building offerings as we move forward. And it's not this, oh, we're going to do it later. No. It just integrated in there. The vision of DevSecOps is this integration of security into the DevOps process. The challenge I see right now, today, where we stand, is security isn't integrated into DevOps. And if we want to get it there, we've got to figure out how to integrate those guys together and not look at them as two separate groups. Then we get to that promise, Carlos, where the stuff it's just best practice as part of my coding practice, and we're producing better, more secure code right out of the gate.
Some of it is also collecting the right telemetry and building that into the process, and understanding that when you can collect data from all these different points, that if you can analyze it in the light of security, that you can do security as part of the process. And it's interesting. So some of you know, I put in a brand new HVAC system in my house, right? This has been the bane of my existence for a while. I had tons of problems with my old system, so I put a new system in for a lot of reasons. And then I had problems with the new system. And my contractors have been working with me, and they're like, you're amazingly kind of patient. I'm like, because this is no different from a network event, a systems event, or a security event. I'm like, we need to collect data from multiple different points and be able to correlate it. It's the same way I would try and find someone trying to infiltrate my network. It's the same way I would try and trace down some type of problem in my network. It's the same way I would troubleshoot why my HVAC system is failing. Like, what is the gas pressure? What is the temperature outside? What's the temperature inside? What time does it fail? Collecting all the data and correlating it is not just good for system health, but is also a lot of the same data points we collect for security. And I think moving forward, we can't lose sight of that. I understand that moving forward, developers maybe will just develop applications. It's completely serverless. I don't have to worry about anything else. What happens when something goes wrong? If you don't understand how things work and what those data points mean and what they are, how are you going to know if someone's compromised your app? How are you going to know if your app is not performing right? How are you going to know if it doesn't have the right level of reliability? It's all the same thing, and it goes back to your point of merging security into all those other development IT practices. It's just part of it. I think when I talk about the challenges we'll face in the near future with security, is moving forward, being able to integrate all of those different aspects, all of those different data points, and use them not just to develop better code, more reliable code, better performing code, but more secure code as well.
I ask again, because I think we're being our own echo chamber here. How does that happen? How does that begin to happen in any organization in America?
Or we need machine learning and AI and blockchain.
And blockchain. We're done.
We're good.
I have.
I mean, you're joking, but but seriously, I think our industry perpetuates this illusion of going down the wrong path because so many of us are so many of us are in the business, and it's our livelihood, and we fear the change. Pragmatically, we need to close the deal, be employed, have the next customer. And I'm not finger pointing individually, but as a collective, I think we perpetuate this not moving the ball forward.
We try to make the problems of security so unique that security is its own discipline. No, I mean, look, I've had enough conversations with customers over the years. One of the most memorable discussions, I was in Scotland, and I'm sitting down with one of the large banks in Scotland, and we're having a conversation.
Did you go to any of the distilleries?
Of course I did. I was at Glengoyne.
One of my pet peeves is when people in the industry start a conversation with, "I have this large customer," but go ahead, Matt.
No, but I mean, you're sitting down with a customer, and you're talking about security event logging. And why it's important, all this other stuff. And he looks at me, he goes, "Yeah, but all my event logging is important, not just security event logs. All event logs are important."
Yeah.
Why? Because if a machine's about ready to run out of memory and it's about ready to tip over,
that reminds me, I gotta check the bandwidth on the fire. Speaking of which,
but he said, "What's the difference between a security event and an IT operations event? If the machine runs out of disk space, it runs out of memory, it runs out of CPU, it runs out of whatever. The machine falls over. I have an outage. Whether a hacker took it down or whether it went down, I have to look at all events together. And I can't separate.
We're 20 meg firewall traffic outbound ingoing out of 150. We're good.
Okay, we're good. But his point was, it's not just the security events. It's all events.
Yeah.
And so my point is, security events and all these IT operational events, all my application logging events, when you bring them all together and you integrate them all together, okay, it might be a hacker, it might be just a system failure. From an operational perspective, they all matter. And we somehow think that the security events are so unique. They're not really when you deal with the operations folks. They don't. This is one.
But that goes back to my point. As a security person, you have to understand all the operational stuff to separate it out.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Jason.
Changing topics. 5 years from now, I see live streaming hackers hacking real networks with a giant audience watching, like Twitch and streaming and people watching hacks.
Yeah, that's really boring, though, Jason.
I think they made that movie in the 80s.
If you watch someone, it's not like Hollywood.
It really is.
It's really boring.
Absolutely boring. We had
boring.
A producer wanted to come and watch a Networks tournament, when I was at Sands, and she was like, "I want to see people hack." And
you would be surprised.
I don't know if you really want to see this.
No, that's why they have commercials. So you cut to the commercial, there's some time lapse, they come back and they've solved the problem.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a poker tournament.
Yes.
Well, you watch a lot of hands just get folded, and you're watching the World Series of Poker, and most of those hands, they delete them out because it takes 6 or 7 hands before there's any action, right? It's the same thing with a hacking event.
No, I have to be honest. If you look at Twitch under science and technology, one of the hottest items right now is just people banging at code. We have OJ that works on Metasploit stuff. He starts writing all of this C code testing and extending of interpreter for 2-3 hours, and he has a captive audience. Right now, I've seen a bunch of Microsoft MVPs actually doing regex for writing Visual Studio Code extensions. And they have 100, 200, 300 people actually watching that Twitch stream.
Yeah, they're from Russia, North Korea.
Coding and testing and discussing the process of through what they're going through. I think kids nowadays, they like that consumption medium of streaming and seeing somebody actually just banging their head, trying to get it to work until they achieve what they want.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because, my daughter will watch someone play Minecraft for 14 hours.
Oh my God.
And
It's amazing. My kids all watch other people play video games.
Right. And I think we're going to get to a point where other people are watching people hack. And it's because as they're watching through, they're learning. And because my daughter learned almost everything she knows about Minecraft by watching people play Minecraft for hours and hours on end. And so I think
I actually got an alert from a Microsoft employee. I have an alert on my phone for a Twitter handle that actually retweets people doing tweet streams on coding. And I just got an alert from a guy from Microsoft that writes Visual Studio extensions that he just started extending one of those for PowerShell. And I got the tweet. I went over very quickly to the Twitch channel, and he has a bunch of people actually following him as he's trying to figure out how to do a regex inside of JSON.
That's a whole new show. We can just live stream BHIS hacking.
I tell you what, if you were live streaming while the entire server rack fell into like almost on top of me today, I was holding my 25 years in the industry. I've spent a lot of time in data centers, racking servers and stuff, right? And I was literally holding the server rack with my right hand, and a server slid off the top. And I was holding the server with my left hand, the rack with my right hand, and until people, thankfully, John and Mark came to my rescue because they heard me scream, "Oh shit!" at the top of my lungs, and heard things crash and stuff. It was very scariest moment of my life inside of a data center.
And we have the camera set up there. We probably almost had you.
We should have. Yeah, it's pointing. Oh no, it is pointing that way. It is pointing that way.
We might actually put that on video today.
Check the tapes. That's
going
to go viral.
I think we're sort of starting to answer your second discussion topic, which is what are some of the major challenges. I see two challenges based on what we're saying. One is, and again, I don't mean this at an individual level, but collectively we need to get over ourselves and learn some humility and figure out that we're not the only game in town, that there's as Matt was indicating, there's a business to be run and there's other motivators and drivers. The other thing is, and I don't have an answer for this, but I'm fascinated by it. Most of us that are talking here more or less grew up in this business at the very beginning. Maybe not completely at the very beginning, but we sort of learned by doing as stuff was, emerging and developing and being created. We were there at the ground floor and learning it ourselves. People in the future that we're going to pass the torch or the baton on to, that's not their experience. What are the things that are going to be my
major concern, Jeff?
The way to learn, the way to, I've been in the business for 38 years, and a good portion of that predates what we know as internet and cybersecurity, and I think it's still meaningful and important. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to pass on the institutional knowledge. I'm part of the curmudgeon group, and that's something that we talk about is there's so much institutional knowledge. How do we pass it on? And I'd also ask how much of it needs to be passed on.
Yeah, I think
it varies per group. As an instructor, one of the things that I like doing is actually, as I'm teaching different subjects, I like watching all of my students' faces, and all of a sudden I see that some of them click with certain stuff and don't click, and click with it. Others click with other. But I'll try to modify the way I'm teaching for the different groups of people inside of the class when I can. And I think trying to find one single answer for that is going to be hard. I think it will vary per group of people. I've actually found that even varies per culture. Some people are better learning some ways than other people probably do not like. For example, I've met some people from the Asia region that like everything to be very, very structured. And I've met people in the States that we have two different ways of doing stuff. One of them wants the minimum detail, the minutia of how everything works behind the scenes so they can learn it. And the others are just going like, give me a target, give me a mission, give me something what I can achieve. Give me the steps and just let me at it. Let me hammer it and I'll learn it on my own. But just give me the basic stuff that I need so I can hammer on this until I get it done. I've seen all three different types of scenarios.
And I think some of my concern, Carlos, and I'll relate this back to food, right? And okay, we could all talk about the zombie apocalypse and all that stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But let's relate it back to food. Like some people will go out to eat to a restaurant, right? Some people will learn how to cook on their own. The extreme of that is some people actually know how to hunt or farm and go make their own food, right? And I think what my philosophy of security is, if you're going to be really good at securing our modern infrastructure today, you have to be that person that knows how to farm or hunt for your own food, to know how it works all the way through the low level up to the high level, to know how to secure it.
And
now, my concern is that the new generation that we're going to rely on in the next 5 or 10 years is the generation that likes to go to the restaurant. And my whole kind of philosophy and mantra today is take the time to learn how to do the farming and in the hunting, to learn how that stuff works.
Because all of us early guys, that's how we grew up.
We did. We
To
had to
Jeff's
hunt.
point.
We had to grow our own food or hunt our own food in
It was
the
like
beginning,
Oregon
right?
Trail.
It's what?
Security was like Oregon Trail.
So to Jeff's point, right?
Oregon Trail. Hold on. Oregon Trail. Explain, please.
Well, you had to go out to the west with wagons, and you had to hunt, and then sometimes you got dysentery.
Or you ate beans or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you got
There was
dysentery.
no Taco Bell. If you wanted to eat, you had to find your food.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's where we started. Is
Yeah.
if you
But I
wanted
mean-
a firewall, you had to know how everything worked to
To
get
Jeff's
it
point,
Yeah.
we all grew up. A lot of us grew up in the early days when it was perimeter, network, endpoint defenses, and that's how we all started. I mean, that's how I started. It was NT security and antivirus and firewalls and DMZs and all the things. And some of us are past that point now when we think about what we have to deploy. And so we grew up, and so we part of the curmudgeon-y about us a little bit, Jeff, is that we all grew up in a time where we were configuring the firewalls, we were doing these things ourselves, and so we have these predispositions. A lot of us came out of network security, a lot of us came out of endpoint security,
or developers.
But you have some predisposed kind of thought process on how to solve a problem. Say, okay, this network, this that. What I'm saying is, in 5 years from now, when we've abstracted away some of those layers, are those as important to really understand? They might be.
Right.
But what I'm saying is there's a whole new set of challenges coming that we don't think about the problem differently. We're trying to think about the problem in our old context of network and endpoint. And network and endpoint may not be at our it may not be available to us.
Does
in
that
the
go
future.
away at some point?
I think so.
Does
see
the
now.
internet not come in through a cable that goes into a physical firewall and a switch?
But the configuration, no, it's a software defined configuration. It's like, what's my gateway? Boom, done. Your network's configured because it's just taken care of for you. My extreme example, and I've used this multiple times, and I think this is where the challenge is for security professionals going forward. When I'm running an application in AWS Fargate, and I don't own the configuration of the host, I don't own really the configuration of the network, and what I'm telling Fargate is, I want these 10 containers to run with this much CPU and memory, and here's my gateway. I don't have to know everything underneath. And when you do that, when you make that move, and companies are making that move today, okay, I can't deploy network security components. I can't deploy endpoint security components. I have to think about security at a different layer. And that's where I see the big challenges, is because we're not thinking about those next layers that we really need to secure. That, to me, is the longer set of challenges for the industry, because we don't, all of us guys that grew up, we still think about networks and endpoints, and I can throw an agent on, I can put it on a span port, and I'm good. I don't think that exists in 5 years, and that's different.
I don't know. I still think
Yeah,
you're
I
gonna
think you're
in
right,
that scenario,
Matt.
Matt. I still think you're gonna run into a problem where you're like, I don't know what this means, and you're gonna have to go back to one of our old curmudgeon-y people like us, and we're gonna go, well, that's a DNS issue, or that's a layer 2 issue, or
might
that's
be.
a
I
layer 4
have
issue.
I have one more concern I want to throw out to the esteemed group here. As I said, as a lot of us probably get approached by people really excited to get into the business. I was at a conference last weekend, and they were talking about the labor shortage and getting people involved and all that. Again, those of us that kind of grew up in this, the pioneers, if you will, in this industry, and we've talked about, we have a way of doing things that may not be relevant anymore. But I think one common denominator that we have seen from all the people we've interviewed over the years, all the people that we consider to be not necessarily rock stars, but really good at this business, they all have a passion for it. They all do it because, it's part of their psyche. It's part of what makes them them. I hear a lot of people talking about getting into the business, retraining into the business. Their job's going away, and so they're looking for a livelihood, and so they want to get into cybersecurity. My question, my thought, and it's maybe a concern, but it's just something I think about is. Are the same caliber of people going to be coming up if they don't necessarily have that drive and that passion to learn? If they're just kind of getting into it because it's they're retraining and it's a way that they perceive to not necessarily make a killing and make rich, but just to make a living. Does that matter? And if it does matter, how again do we sort of cultivate that desire, that sort of inner, the hacker mentality, if nothing else, that drives you to become good at what you do and to keep learning and digging and trying to figure out how things work, whether they're the fundamentals or whether they're the things that you're presented with.
The way I see it is just normal human behavior. It's like when you want to have somebody learn soccer, or you want somebody to be the best lawyer, the best doctor, is going to be on an individual basis. But at the very least, we have to push for people to take ownership of what they want to do. People need to understand that they need to put in the work.
Carlos, you're like my kung fu master that I studied with when he defines what kung fu means, right? It's skill derived from effort, and he would say you can have
passion,
soccer kung fu, or computer kung fu, or whatever. Sorry, Carlos, you took me back to that moment.
And he's right. I've seen a lot of people go like, "But Carlos, I want to be good at this," and we're like, "Then you gotta practice."
Yeah.
You got to go through the process. You got to build labs. You got to.
Oh God, you're channeling. He would say that too. I would do it for him. He'd be like,
"This is why Paul spent a few hours today trying to figure out how to connect a Cat 6 cable to the gig firewall so we can get a full gig out of this place."
He would just look at me, whether I was learning a weapon or a form or a technique. He'd be like, "I'm like, how am I doing, Master Wu?" He'd be like, "You need more practice." And I'm like, "Holy crap, you're like right out of a movie, Master Wu." And he would just laugh. But that was like legit how he rolled. Carlos, you're totally channeling,
Oh yeah, in my case, I'm channeling Jocko Willink. I don't know if you follow his podcast.
Jocko, oh yeah. What was the book was that, Carl? Not Unbeatable Mind, the other one. What is it?
Ownership.
Yeah, Extreme Ownership. Right?
Extreme ownership, and he also has the dichotomy of leadership.
I haven't read that one yet. Yeah, but that's a very good book series.
I've actually bought them for my daughter.
Yes.
And I actually follow his podcast religiously.
So
I agree with all that, but what it necessarily means, though, is that there's a certain number of people that are getting into and are in the field that probably don't have that drive and aren't ultimately going to be very good at it.
And the thing is that we have to accept that some people are going to come into it because they just want the money. They just want that work 9 to 5. They just want to put in the hours and have enough skill where they can be productive. And then they want to come, once they clock out at 5, I'm just going to play basketball, play video games, do other stuff. And then you're going to have other people that are going to be A-type mentalities, that they want to compete, they want to be the best in the team, and they want to challenge themselves. And then
we were just talking about that. Those are the people we hire.
Right, but there's a place for both, though.
There is. Yeah.
If you look at where we need resources, there's a place for both.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be an A-type in security and go out and start up 3 or 4 different startup companies, right? Some people are going to come in, they're going to do their shift as a security analyst, they're going to be very happy, they're going to be very good at it. That's fine. I don't discount that at all. But
it's my Walmart shirt story that I was telling. So I went to the dry cleaners, right? And then I got my shirts and I brought them home, and I told my wife, I got someone else's shirts. And I kind of looked at them. I was like, those definitely are not my shirts. My wife looked at them, and she's like, those are from Walmart. And when I brought them back to the dry cleaner, I'm like, got these shirts. I'm like, these look like they're kind of like from Walmart or something. And he's like, whoa, you wouldn't wear shirts from Walmart. Yeah. I'm like, look, I'll tell you this right now. If someone who works a job and all they can afford is Walmart shirts, and they went through the effort of having them dry clean and they work hard for what they do, I have a tremendous amount of respect for that person. But those aren't my shirts. I have a taste in shirts that's not Walmart, but I totally respect the person who is working hard, for those shirts and working hard to.
And we need those resources too.
Absolutely,
right? We need them all. There's no exclusions here in this.
And I'm not saying I'm better or whatever, but I just spend more money on shirts than some people because.
You're just high maintenance.
I'm high maintenance and ridiculous like that. That's basically what I'm saying. Yeah.
And the way I see this, once you find that resource that actually has that drive, you cultivate that drive. You make sure that they are taking ownership of stuff. You work by example by taking ownership, showing that you're motivated so you can keep those guys motivated. You make sure that you remove all of the business BS out of their plate so they can focus on what they do if you want to really be a good leader and you want to cultivate that stuff. When I left a job recently, one of the things that several of my guys were telling me, dude, you filter so much BS that we didn't have to deal with.
I know your story, Carlos. I feel your pain,
people telling us hey, you did this very well, but you can improve here to be even better. They just go oh, you suck at this. You should do everything better.
Hey,
and that was that I made the conscious decision that I was going to cultivate the people that I managed. And it boils down a lot to is the way I see it.
Hey, when I started, I didn't even have shirts that needed to be dry cleaned. So, that's
real quick.
Jason,
back to the passion thing. Being in marketing, because I work in marketing.
You're Jason from marketing.
No, I get to see the analytics. I get to see the amount of people that are reading blogs. I get to see the people who show up for the webcasts. I get to see the amount of people showing up to learn. And from that aspect, I see a ton of people that are passionate. They're you put out a blog post and, it's something relevant and it answers a question. And all of a sudden you see 10,000 views on that blog post. And it's people who are I need to know that. Or it's they were Google searching for something that they didn't know. They're Google searching for it because they need to know it, but they're also passionate about learning the answer. And they're willing to read through all that and everything else. And so what I'm also seeing is a lot of security companies are now generating their own webcasts and everything else and blog content. And that's being consumed by, every day I have this thing where I sign up for every single, I walk around ours saying scan my badge, scan my badge, scan my badge, scan my badge.
It's a learning. Well, so it when before I even realized I could actually dry clean my shirts, right? I would consume things, and then when I worked in my day job when I was still in college, they would tell me you don't know a lot. I'm I get that, and they're if you have a question, they're make sure that you spend at least a half an hour trying to figure it out on your own. And they instilled that kind of culture with me that I can't just go to someone to get the answer, that I had to work on my own and show that I was willing to put the work in to try and figure out the answer on my own. Sometimes I got it on my own or got pretty close. If I didn't, I could go to them, and the first question they asked me, well, what have you tried so far? Right? That was the first question. Anytime I asked anyone a question about programming, IT. This was in the days of OS2 Warp, and I'd be like, well, it was before Google, right? I'm like, I read the manual, like I read the help screen. This was when Google didn't exist, and if I didn't do that, they'd be like, well, you're not ready to ask a question yet, right? And that was kind of a proving ground, but also teaching me that I had to try to learn on my own before they would help me with the answer. It was to prove that you had that motivation.
You just, for me, that was what you just said was the main takeaway from tonight is, I started off by saying, over the next 5 years, there's going to be all these people entering into cybersecurity. The cyber clubs are filling up and everything, and there's these people. If the people who are listening to this right now take that advice and say, for all these people coming into the industry, and you say, did you spend the 30 minutes looking for the answer?
Right.
I think 5 years from now, if everyone takes that advice and applies it to all the people coming in, that's going to be a huge impact on security.
And don't spend an hour or 3 hours, because now you're wasting your time.
Right.
Yeah. But don't spend a minute and go, throw your hands up. I don't get it. Right. There's
Just give me the answer.
there's a balance. Yeah. There's a balance. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to see. They told me that they're like, I don't want to see you wasting like tons of time, but I want to see you trying to figure it out on your own, because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
But when you reach a point and you're really truly stuck, that's when we'll help you. And that was the best. I think some of the best advice I ever got in my career, to be honest with you.
I think there's always going to be need for good mentorship. You have
Yep.
You have to give the young people good guidance, and then it's not go solve it on your own. It's go this far, and then let's go solve it the rest of the way together.
Yep.
Get you over the finish line.
Yep.
Trust.
It's our intern Matt Silva, totally in that realm. That's why we hired him here at Security Weekly, because he was like, well, I worked in the help desk fixing people's computers to gain that foundational knowledge. And to me, he was proving to me that I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to start at the very bottom, the beginning, to fix people's computers, to learn how all this stuff works so that I can have that career in security. And I was like, you need to work here. And he's the same thing. I'm like, you need to figure this out. I'm like, don't spend too long like trying to figure it out. Come to me when you get stuck.
Kind of like the cable today. He got stuck.
He got stuck. Yeah, I'm like, dude, try this. Come get me when you get stuck. But I think those foundational skills are still very important.
He only got stuck because of a wall, so we'll just take the wall out tomorrow.
Dude.
We'll be fine.
And let me tell you, I tried, and I was like, I'm stuck too, dude. We're gonna try a different thing tomorrow. We need more tools. So, props to him. Yeah, and so those are the kind of people that we talked about in BSW earlier about who we hire and why. And it's not so much on skill; it's about character and motivation. And
so I was a new dad. My daughter would ask me for something, I would answer a question. So it was why, and I'd answer it. Why, I'd answer it. Hey, I can't find something. I'd help her find something. Until I was starting to get frustrated that she wasn't doing it on her own, and it finally got to a point where you look for it for 5 minutes. If you can't find it, come get me. And I think that's what you said. You look for it for 5 minutes. You look for it for 30 minutes. And if you can't get it, then I think that's going to make you a better, like Lee was saying, a mentor to that generation coming in.
You learn more from your failures than you do success. And my son along those lines is really funny. My wife was struggling with a drill, trying to fix the chairs or whatever. And my son was like, oh, I'll help you with that. And he did it. And it's only because I let him go build his own fort. I'm like, if it falls down or it fails, I'll help you fix it. But he was in there, he'd stripped a bunch of screws, broke a bunch of drill bits, broke a bunch of screws. But now he's at the point where he knows it because he failed.
Yeah.
Because we let him try, we let him fail, and we helped him along the way. But that's why. Yeah.
I think there's another challenge out there that's coming at us as we get not just new security research, but new on the technology development side. They're going to come up with things to the table that we're never heard of, and we don't want to squash their innovation. So we're going to have to struggle to keep up.
We will, because I think they're going to think about these problems, I think, very differently.
Yeah.
To my point, than we did when we came through these ranks. They're going to think about stuff completely different because they're so much more engaged with technology than we were at that age. They're going to come out of the woodwork with an idea that we're going to be like, I don't know about that. No, embrace it. Let's see where it goes, because these kids are going to do things very different than we did.
And I love that. I love that when they look at a problem and they're like, tried this, and I'm like, wow, like I would have never considered that. I'm like, it's not going to work, but like that's awesome that you went down that
And
like
then
a
it
totally
works.
different path. Like that's really cool. And sometimes I'm like, that has merit. Maybe we modified a little bit, and that's on the path
And
to
that's
solution.
where innovation is going to
Yes.
come from in this space.
And that's why it's important to have that diversity. We were talking about earlier, even on BSW too, to have that. I got a degree in something else. I come from a different background. It's so important to have a diverse team in any business, especially in security, because quite frankly, we're going to be presented with challenges that are just off the charts. Like it really, and not just in our field, but in any field, right?
Yeah.
We're presented with challenges. We're like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. It's only creativity, I think, and innovation that really leads you to a solution to those strange problems. And you see them all the time.
Yeah, and that ties into number 3, that threat evolution, because it's going to be different. Those threats that we see in the future over the next 5 years will be very, very different. And to have
it's
that
offense
diversity,
and defense, right? Yeah.
But to have that diversity and to have that different thought process, I think is where we will be able to look at those new evolving threats and come up with new innovative solutions to try to solve them, because that's just this is the way that
how
it's
many
gonna
of us
transform.
today, when we're dealing with any type of technology, we go to our children and we're like, well, how do you use this, and how do you like kind of hack this? I mean, and frankly, if you're a hacker, our kids understand what a hacker is, and you ask them like, oh, how do you hack that? How do you observe other kids hacking this?
Yeah.
That's a source of creativity and inspiration.
Yeah.
There are my oldest son is 10, and I still ask him questions. I'm like, how does that work? Like, how do you get music from here? How do you do Minecraft like this?
Here's
like,
my phone. Can you
like
figure
how do
out
you
the settings on it?
do that? Like help
because they
mom
know where
do
all the
that.
settings
Right?
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally true.
Yeah.
Well, that gives me hope. I'm glad we ended on a positive note. We're going to take a short break, come back, talk about the security news for this week, so stay tuned.